Welcome to the Recruiting Stories Podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. Guys, welcome to another edition of the Recruiting Stories Podcast. This month, our guest is Trey Griggs. Trey is a Swiss Army knife in the transportation industry. He's done a bunch of different things. I'm sure that you have seen him on social media or at a trade show, or maybe met him somewhere. He does a bunch of different things. He's currently the president of the Beta Consulting Group, stands for Be Excellent Today. He's a passionate guy. He's a great communicator. He's a great storyteller, and you're going to enjoy our conversation. We talk about, obviously, his recruiting story. We talk a little bit about what he's doing with Beta Consulting Group and his clients right now when it comes to branding and standing out in the marketplace when it comes to transportation. And we talk a little bit about, faith as well, right? Faith and then leadership too. I love our conversation around leadership, people who have, poured into him, helped mold and shape who he is, and then how faith has shaped his journey in the industry and where he's heading. And we certainly relate to that with Cover 3 and our hope to make an impact for a greater purpose as well. So I'm looking forward to your feedback on this one, guys. Take a listen. It's Trey Griggs with the Beta Consulting Group. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Recruiting Stories Podcast. I'm really excited. We've got Trey Griggs, the founder of Beta Consulting Group. Welcome, Trey.
Man, it's so good to finally be on the show, Adrian. Man, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Absolutely. I feel like we should have done this a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Apologies.
Finally made it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. If you guys don't know Trey, Trey is one of the best communicators that I know. Great storyteller, and just you see him all over the transportation industry. You see him at conferences. You see him on social media. Great guy, and excited to share his story a little bit. So, Trey, tell us a little bit about Beta Consulting Group, what you're doing now, and we'll start there.
Well, first of all, that's very kind. I appreciate those words of encouragement. Appreciate it very much. Beta Consulting Group is a company that I started about 5 months ago. Primarily, I was going to do sales and marketing consulting. I've been in sales for the last 12 years. I've started to think more like a marketer in the last 2 or 3 in terms of messaging and content creation and things like that. I love creating content and videos and those types of things. And so when I started Beta Consulting, I thought, well, I'm going to be a sales and marketing consultant. I'm going to work on companies, putting those two together. And I'm still passionate about that. But I've really started to lean more towards the marketing side, towards helping companies with their messaging, with their brand, and doing it in conjunction, in concert with sales, because sales and marketing really should work together. The marketing deliverables should help the sales team be more effective, and the processes that go into educating customers or prospects, that is, and getting them interested in what you're doing, and help salespeople have an easier road. But also to get feedback from salespeople to create marketing content. Who better to ask to create content than the people who are talking to prospects, who are hearing the objections or experiencing the wins and understanding why customers are saying yes? That content is gold for marketing, because what caused customer A to say yes is more likely going to be what's going to cause customer B, C, and D to say yes as well. So we just started that 5 months ago, focusing primarily on transportation. We got a team of 4 now, looking like possibly 5 or 6 here real soon, helping companies with their branding, messaging, content creation, social media management, podcasting. We've got several customers that are starting podcasts, and video creation, video production. Anything that helps push their brand forward, we're all about that.
I love it. Congrats on the growth. That's amazing. One of the things you said that I'm curious about before, because I want to dive into your story and kind of how you ended up here, but you talked about, getting marketing and sales to communicate. And I love that idea, just because sales, people always say, hey, that's the tip of the spear, right? Like they're the person, out on the front lines. What is the reason why sales and marketing often don't communicate in an organization?
Well, their approach is vastly different, number one. So it kind of automatically kind of feels different. Salespeople tend to be a little bit more in terms of communicating one-on-one, having interpersonal communication or conversations with one person or a group of people. Marketing is more about one-to-many and creating content that's both text-based but also graphic-based. So there's more artistry involved in that. And so the people who typically do marketing and sales are different types of people, number one. Yep. But number two, marketing tends to be one-to-many approach, and sales is one-to-one. And so the approach just tends to, by nature, have to be a little bit different. And for whatever reason, I think a lot of companies don't look at it as one. They really look at it as two departments. And what tends to happen for especially startup companies is the first thing they really try to grow at some point is a sales team. And marketing is sometimes the last thing that people think about, even though, in my opinion, if you're starting a company, the thing you need more than anything is for people to know you exist and to know what you do. So marketing is like is preeminent in that regard. It's the biggest priority I think that any company has is getting their brand established. But a lot of times it starts with sales and then they kind of bring in marketing and they just treat them differently. My first sales job was with a company that it was phenomenal at sales and marketing. And even then, I never spoke with anybody from the marketing team. It didn't seem like there was a lot of communication back and forth. And I think that's most common just because of the differences in the approaches and the type of personnel that are in those departments. But man, they really do work together. I mean, who better to help your sales team out than the people who are telling the stories about the company?
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk more about your background. You talked about your first sales role. I know for any good team, communication is absolutely vital. And I know you're a sports guy. I know you played some basketball back in the day, right?
I did. Yeah. I played a little college basketball, a little college golf.
So let's start there. Yeah, let's start there. Tell me, and I want to kind of go into your recruiting story. So tell me a little bit about how you went from being a college basketball player. And it looks, I think you went into ministry at one point, teaching maybe, and then
a little bit of everything so far.
A little bit of everything, yeah. So let's walk through some of those things. I'm curious to hear a little bit about.
I've been a janitor. I've been a JV basketball coach. I've done a lot of different things. No, when I was in college, I had a gentleman recruit me out of high school. His name is Larry Holly. He just recently passed away. He was the only coach really that recruited me because my junior year I stopped growing. I ended up being 5'8", which isn't really, very tall when it comes to basketball, especially at the collegiate level. And so he was an NAI Division II coach and saw a lot of potential in me and recruited me. And I had a great time there. I only actually played 1 year. But that 1 year we went to the Final Four. We lost to the eventual champion, Bethel College out of Indiana. We had an All-American that year. And he was the kind of guy that really wanted me to be a great person and to experience success, whether it was on his team or not. In fact, my sophomore year, I started playing golf full time because that's where I really felt like my future was going to be. And he encouraged that. He was very supportive of that, even though I had experience in the national championship, tournament. I had helped the team get where they were. He believed in me more than who I played for, or the team that I was on. And so just made a huge impact in my life. And from there, I thought I was going to be a high school, physics and math teacher. Ended up getting a degree in communication, even though I had a lot of those courses. After school, after a couple of failed attempts at being a golf pro, I became a high school physics teacher, kind of back to what I originally thought I would do. Absolutely loved that. Really enjoyed that. Did that for 3 years. I was coaching sports as well. I was single at the time. So it was a great time for me in my life. Felt like it was my sweet spot in terms of teaching students and coaching. And then I wanted to have more of a spiritual impact. So I became a youth pastor. And what I found out was that youth pastors don't actually spend a lot of time with youth, believe it or not, because while they're at the office all day planning for their one shot at Wednesday night or Sunday morning, the students are actually at school all day. So after about 1.5 years, 2 years, I went back into teaching and I did youth ministry part-time. So I kind of got the best of both worlds of being with kids all day and teaching them, but also having that spiritual impact as a youth pastor, and did that up until 2010. And then in 2010, we had to make a decision as a family. We had one kid and one on the way. And my wife was staying home at the time. So you can imagine living on one teacher income and part-time youth ministry. Yeah. We weren't getting ahead. We were just barely getting by. And, we made the decision that if we wanted this lifestyle where my wife was able to stay home, that I had to get a new career that would afford that. And so I had a friend encourage me to get into sales. I did door-to-door sales for 15 months in Portland, Oregon, selling paper and toner, business to business. Wow. And it rained 6 months out of the year and I'm wearing a suit. I guarantee you that there were old ladies in little lawyer shops, whatever, that were buying paper for me just because I was soaking wet. I didn't care at all. And then what really kind of got me into transportation and sales was after 15 months of door-to-door, which was 100% commission and the hardest job I've ever had. I often tell people that door-to-door sales is the best thing you could ever do for a sales career. And it's like boot camp. People always say about boot camp, I'm glad I went. Man, I hope I never have to go back. That's how I feel about door-to-door sales. I'm glad I did it. Mm-hmm. I hope I never have to go back. But after 15 months of that, I connected with a recruiter in Portland and said, hey, I'm looking for a professional sales job. And that recruiter had a connection with DAT Solutions in transportation, load board, and rating solutions company in Portland. And I didn't know about them. I knew nothing about them, but had the opportunity to go work there for 4 years. Had a great career there. After doing door-to-door sales, selling a DAT seemed pretty easy. So I did well. Had great leaders there that helped me grow as a salesperson. And that was my entrance into logistics. And I've been in transportation ever since.
I love that. I agree on the door-to-door selling part. I tell people all the time, if you can do door-to-door sales, you can do darn near anything.
Just about, yeah. If you can make money and provide for your family selling door-to-door, you're going to be okay.
Well, I feel like having done that myself in the financial services industry, it's as psychological as it is anything. Like if you can convince yourself and you can knock on that next door, if you can take the rejection day after day, you can do a lot. You can do a lot.
It was hard. It was hard at first. They taught us a lot about emotional intelligence. I credit a lot of the people that I worked with there, Donnie Boyer, Mike Saito. My boss was Melissa White. She was great too. But they taught us a lot about how to think. And, after you get over the initial rejection of door-to-door sales and you survive, then you can start having fun with it. And I think a lot of people never get to that point of kind of getting through the tough part of rejection to where you can start to enjoy it. Let me give you a quick example. We walk into these businesses and a lot of people would say, there's no soliciting, get out of here. I'm going to call the cops or, whatever, just being mean and not happy. Right. And I remember one time I was with one of my trainers and there was a no solicitation sign on the window. And I was like, we're not going in there. And then he goes, yeah, we're going in there. It's like, what are you talking about? There's a no solicitation sign. He goes, watch this. So we go in and of course they say, excuse me, gentlemen, there's a no solicitation sign on the window. And this guy, Donnie Boyer, he says, oh man, I saw that, but it looked old and raggedy. And listen, we sell new ones that are much bigger and you can keep guys like us out of here, so we'll be glad to help you out with that today. And while we're here, we'll get you some paper and some toner as well. And it just didn't bother him. He didn't let that bother him. And that's when I started to have fun with it, started to actually enjoy it. And you start to realize that you have to get to the no's in order to find the yeses. They're there, but you got to go through the no's. So every no was one door closer to a yes. And it's just like, reminding yourself, hey, one more door, just do one more door, do one more door. And then lo and behold, you'll find the guy at 4:30 in the afternoon who now he's got time to think and you walk in and he wants to have a chat and he'll buy some paper and toner and you make money. But you don't get to that door if you stop halfway because of the rejection. So learned a lot about emotional intelligence, learned a lot about resiliency and working hard. It was a great experience. Like I said, I'm glad I did it. I hope I never have to go back and do it again, but I'm glad I did it.
For sure. Well, yeah, you learn to not take those no's as personal, right?
Which took a little while.
Yeah,
took a while to get there.
Who said no to me, I was like, they probably hate me and my family, and they're going to tell everyone. I was just like, oh my gosh, I just took it so personal.
That's real though. That's when you're starting. That's the natural way to take it, and then after a while, you realize, hey, maybe that person's having a bad day. What if I can just get them smiling or laughing just a little bit, even if they don't buy anything? How can I make their day better? And you start to see the world differently when you get yourself out of the way, when you stop taking things personally. So again, just learned a ton through that experience.
That's good. Talk to me. Just go back real fast to Coach Holly, right? So that was probably like your first experience getting recruited, I would imagine, right? And actually having a chance to somebody say like, hey, you could be good at this, or maybe I want you. What was formative about that for you? Was there anything specific you remember that was like, hey, this is why I had to go to William Jewell, right?
Yeah, William Jewell. That's correct. Yeah, it was the first time because, going to high school, I didn't go to private school or anything like that. So there was no recruiting really, except for, maybe teachers or coaches that wanted you on their team for something. I had a baseball coach that was trying to recruit me to come play baseball in high school, and I was just really into golf. So I didn't do that. But, Coach Holly was the first one that I experienced the recruiting process. He would come to our games and watch. He would come after the game and, tell us great game or whatever. And then I remember the day that he came to our high school and, pulled us out of class and, came down, and there was another player on my team that they were recruiting as well. And he pitched us William Jewell. And what was interesting about that was I really struggled with confidence at that point in my life. Just self-confidence, genuine self-confidence. And I kept thinking, why does he want me on his team? Like, what does he see in me? Why does he want me on his team? And I actually did not go to William Jewell the first semester. I actually went to Missouri State. I just wanted to get away. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do in life, and I got away. But what happened at Missouri State was I was playing in intramurals and I was working out, and I was dominating in intramurals, which I should never dominate a basketball game. I'm only 5'8". I shouldn't dominate, but I was, and I was realizing, man, I really missed the competition. So I actually called Coach Holly in December of that first semester, and I said, Coach, I think I made a mistake. I really want to come and play. Do you have any room for me? And as it turns out, they just weren't able to solidify a backup point guard that year. They had a starting point guard who was great, Brian Zoller out of Lee Summit, Missouri. They didn't have a backup that they were really excited about. They had a 2-guard that they had recruited from Alaska and tried to make him a point guard, and it just wasn't quite a good fit. And so Coach Holly the thing I remember is he was not like, he didn't throw it in my face that I didn't come to Jewell. Mm-hmm. He didn't make me feel bad about it. He was excited to hear from me. And he just said, well, what kind of shape are you in? Do you think you could play now? And I said, well, I've been practicing and playing. He goes, why don't you, when you get back from the end of the semester, when you get back up to town, why don't you come up on a Saturday and play with the guys and let's just see how you do. And so he was very welcoming, believed in me. And I mean, I practiced with the team for the first time around December 20th. And I played my first game January 13th. Nice. So, I mean, it was like a quick turnaround where he said, yeah, you'll do just fine here, just like we thought. He believed in me. He got me involved in classes and got me registered and helped me with financial aid, just, whatever's available, and just made it possible. And was somebody who, always believed in me in a way that I couldn't even understand, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't understand why this guy believed in me so much. But that's who he was. He had the ability to believe in you enough that you started believing in yourself, and it was an amazing experience. And the first time, one of the few times in my life, but the first time that I went through that recruiting process and felt somebody who really wanted me to be a part of what they were doing.
I love that. I love the idea of, because that formative for me in my life too, and I've seen it translate to success for so many other people, is literally the one person who believes in someone else. Like that can change an entire course and trajectory of somebody's life. Have you had, or maybe not to exactly the same, but have you experienced that with any other managers or within a recruiting process at another company or anything like that along the way? Or felt like you were that person for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, I'll go all the way back to my high school days with my high school coach. I played for the legendary Bud Lathrop at Raytown South. He retired as the winningest basketball coach in the state of Missouri, 955 wins. Fun fact, doesn't say anything about me, but a fun fact about me is that I got to play for 2 coaches that both won over 900 games, which is a crazy stat. But again, it doesn't say anything about me. It says more about them. But Bud Lathrop was one of those guys that always poured into me. And I had a tough time during that time in my life with my dad. We just had a rough relationship. Mm-hmm. And man, Coach Lathrop just stepped in. I remember one game I blew out my shoes. And it was towards the end of the game, and I didn't get to play the rest of the game because my shoes blew out. Mm-hmm. But that was on a Friday night. Saturday morning, Coach Lathrop shows up at my door, 9 a.m., says, get in the car, takes me out to Jerry's Sporting Goods, buys me another pair of shoes. Because my dad couldn't afford it. My dad bought the first pair. I knew he couldn't afford it. And just stepped in the gap and was tremendous. And so I've had people like him, obviously Coach Holly, Coach Bill Scolott, who was the coach at William Jewell College that believed in me and gave me free lessons. He was a PGA pro that just took me under his wing and really taught me how to play and believed in me. I've certainly had some people along the way. I'll mention Kyle Unruh, who used to work with Kanakuk Camps. And he sat me down one time, and I remember he said, you can play any sport you want. You're so talented. What do you want to do? And I just remember thinking to myself, like, wow, again, the struggle with confidence, it's hard to accept that. It was hard to hear that, but he believed in me and gave me a chance to do some leadership things before, anyone else really had at that point in my life. I was 21 years old. So there were definitely people along the way, people in my career, in teaching, Steve Shelton, my principal at Raytown High School when I taught there, Phil Roguski, who was my principal when I taught here in St. Louis, and a dear friend of mine that I still have dinner with him and his wife. My wife and I have dinner with them once every 2 or 3 months, and still spend time with them. So there have definitely been some people along the way who have really truly believed in me. Janice Compton, my first sales manager at DAT, just believed in me, and so there were a lot of people that poured into me along the way.
So what I'm hearing is like Trey Griggs, the business owner. Today, the product of a lot of people pouring into you. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us get to where we are without the certain people in our life that help us out. And even now, I mean, I feel like I'm starting a brand new journey as a founder of a company. And so people like Shannon Breen from Freightvana and Steve Cox over at Steam Logistics, and some of the other people in the industry that are just helping out. Dusty Holcomb at Red Stag Fulfillment. That guy has just given me his time and been so generous with it to help out. And so many others along the way. Yeah, you're definitely a product of the people that have poured into your life, and I've been incredibly blessed with some amazing people.
What is a common thread for those people? Because, I've had a lot of those people in my life too, who I'm like, why on earth would you give me your time? Why on earth would you tell me that I can be this or that? What do you think is a common thread for those types of individuals?
Well, I mean, I think it's a genuine care for other people, a genuine love for other people, and wanting to see them succeed. It's that coach mentality, that teacher mentality. We talked about this before, but like a coach, a really good coach is not there to win games. Winning the games is the byproduct of helping people become better. When a coach helps players communicate better or refine their skills or handle adversity better, whatever it might be, when a coach does that, the byproduct is success on the court and winning. And so when you look at coaches out there that have had a lot of success, you also see a lot of very successful people that come out of their programs as adults. I think of Coach K and a lot of the people that have come out of the Duke. So a lot of people hate Duke, but right. I mean, Grant Hill's a good dude. You see him on every Final Four broadcasting the games. He's a good dude. Bobby Hurley was a great player and a great coach. You just see a lot of good people come out of the program because of the things that Coach K can instill in them beyond the basketball field and those or basketball court. But then those characteristics translate also to success on the court. Loving your teammates, sacrificing, communicating well, all of those attributes, contribute to winning. And so these people in my life, especially, are people who, for whatever reason, just want to help other people succeed. And I think the biggest thing is I wasn't afraid to ask for it. One thing I learned early in life is don't be afraid to ask people to help you. Yeah. Because sometimes that's all it takes. Like people just want to, if you go up to somebody who is a really great leader or coach and you say, hey, I could use some help learning these things. If they can do it, they will, because that's what it's all about. So I'm just seeing a common thread of people that really want to help other people succeed, and that coach mentality, that teacher mentality. And I wasn't afraid to ask for it.
That's good. I feel like that character, that integrity, deeply rooted values that people have. Obviously, that has poured over into your life, into my life. And it's so attractive. When I think of the recruiting, for instance, right, selfishly, when it comes to this topic in my own world, like that is the best recruiting tool that you will ever have, is people of character and integrity who match the values that you have. And so like if you have, as an organization, a mission and people match that, guess what? You're going to attract other people who do that. So let's actually transition to that on that note, because obviously with Beta now, right? You are Beta Consulting Group. You guys focus on branding a lot, right? And what an incredible time that we have in the world where you can build like a personal brand, and that is becoming more and more popular. So talk to me a little bit about that when it comes to, we've talked about how like recruiting obviously has like impacted your own journey. Obviously the war for talent has never been hotter than it is right now. And we talked about how mission impacts that. So talk to me about how you guys see branding in 2022 here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to my belief that brand really is everything. Like it's, in my opinion, the most valuable thing that any company owns is their brand, because brand is reputation. Brand is what someone thinks about you or thinks about your company when they see your name or your company's name, your company logo. It's what they think about, and if you use an example like, Nike, for example, Nike, you can think of a lot of things. You might think the best athletes in the world. You might think, stay active, just do it, those types of things. You might think sweatshops, but it's Nike's job to own that narrative and to tell that story and to build the reputation, and hopefully a reputation that is consistent with who they really are, that's realistic. But by telling that story and by building your reputation based upon who you authentically are, I mean, that's more valuable than anything that you have, in my opinion, is your brand. And so it really is everything. So what we try to do is communicate that to our prospects, to our clients, that, hey, listen, let's build your brand. Let's tell your stories. Let's let people know who you are. Because like you said, you recruit not only prospective employees from that, but you retain employees from that. And you also attract prospects who agree with that. I talk to CEOs about this all the time. Wouldn't you, as a CEO, love for your next best employee to come to you because they heard you talking about what you value and what matters most to you and how you believe in treating people and your leadership philosophy? Wouldn't you love for your next best customer, who's going to pay on time and who's going to help you grow as a business, to come to you because they resonate with your values and what your company's trying to do? And those things don't happen unless you tell your story and build your brand. And so I'm really passionate about that, about helping companies do that, and just understanding that brand truly is everything. The Bible says that a good name is to be more treasured than silver or gold. And I think that's true of companies and their brand. Like a good name, and you see these companies that, they're in the news for negative things. They're in the news for non-solicit or non-compete agreements or whatever. They're in the news for laying off a bunch of people. They're in the news for some scandalous type of things that happen, and it absolutely kills their brand. And so I think that, people, as companies understand that, and as people understand that brand is one of the most valuable commodities that you have, and you need to treat it accordingly. And there's never been, like you said, a better time to build a personal brand or a company brand, because the levels of communication have just been opened up with social media and the ability to do that, where there's no gatekeepers anymore. There's, it used to be that, to build a brand, you had to get in touch with the mainstream media through either advertising or, TV or radio or whatever, commercials. And it's just not that way anymore. You can build a brand across the world just by opening up a LinkedIn account and starting to talk about what you value, opening up a TikTok account and talking about what you value. And so it's never been easier to do it, but it's so important in my opinion.
Wait, let's talk about that, because I feel I have that conversation with candidates all the time. Is like, oh, do you know if they support somebody who's fairly outspoken on social media or not? And sometimes that's a question I've had to ask. When I'm working with maybe new clients, is like, well, hey, how do you feel about personal brands? Do you guys actually promote things? So, obviously an organization has their brand as a whole. Can someone have, their personal brand, but then also support the organization's brand at the same time?
Oh, 100%. And I think this goes back to leadership. If you're working for a company and you believe in what you guys are doing, you're going to want to promote that. You're going to want to support that. You're going to want to represent that. It's when you don't believe in what your company is doing that there might be some issues. And that goes back to leadership and what's at the top. And for leaders, I think that they do themselves a huge disservice when they discourage their people from having a personal brand. If you trust someone and believe in someone enough to hire them, then, I think that you should trust them as well to represent your brand. And you obviously can have some guidelines. You can tell people, hey, listen, when you're talking about our company, here's here's the sandbox we'd like for you to play in. But within that sandbox, be yourself, be who you are. And what I've seen is the companies that embrace that ideology of, hey, let's help people have their own personal brand and represent us out there in the marketplace, those companies seem to win. And the companies that are resistant to it and want to have control and are afraid of what's going to happen are often the companies that don't win, because again, that's a control narrative. Like a leader who has to have control is probably not a good leader, because great leaders understand that you don't really have control. It's like my kid at the dinner table when she was 2 years old, 3 years old. I couldn't make her eat her vegetables. I couldn't do it. I'm a grown man. I could not make a 2-year-old eat vegetables. I could put them in her mouth. Yeah. Couldn't make her actually eat them. Like it's out of my control. And when you realize as a leader that you're not in control, your job is to inspire and influence and motivate and encourage and give people a vision, give people a mission that they want to be a part of. And when you do that successfully, those people are going to represent you well in their personal brand. And so to me, if that situation ever occurs where a company's not embracing that, to me, it's usually a reflection of the leadership.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, with my 3-year-old, one thing that I learned is when it comes to motivation, I got to offer her a cookie or something really fun after dinner if she eats her food. And that works. Amazing.
Right. Because you can't convince a 3-year-old that green beans are going to make her stronger or healthier. Like that just doesn't resonate. So it's the same thing with anybody else. Like you can't make people do anything. But you can certainly inspire them and give them a reason to want to do something and be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, that's good. If you're speaking to, let's just say a leader listening right now, and they're like, "Hey, I'm growing a brand right now. I don't feel like we have, I feel like we have a good company. We've got a good pipeline of clients. We're moving freight or whatever they do within the transportation industry per se, but they don't feel like they have a brand. Have any like building? Obviously, they should talk to you, but like, have any like, hey, maybe here's some really basics that we should start with."
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have a brand whether you know it or not.
Right.
People are going to have a thought about your company when they see, your logo, your customers in particular, and your employees in particular. That's where it starts, because your employees see your brand, they see your name, and they're part of the community, and your customers see it as well. So the brand starts there. But secondly, I think the biggest questions that you got to ask when you think about building your brand is, who do we want to communicate with, and where do they live? So if you're a transportation company that is like a freight broker, 3PL, the people that you really want to talk to from a customer perspective are shippers and manufacturers, or carriers, asset-based carriers. And so you got to say, well, where do those people live? And a lot of the carriers live on Facebook. They live on, TikTok and Instagram, because drivers a lot of times are sitting at night, they're scrolling through videos, they're bored out on the road. And so TikTok's become a really popular platform for them. If you're talking about customer shippers, a lot of them live on LinkedIn. So you first have to identify who you want to talk to, who you want to tell a story of your company to, and where they live. And then the second question is, what medium will most resonate with them? A lot of people like to watch videos nowadays because of social media. They'd much rather watch a video, the average person, than read. Not everybody, but that's on the average, most people enjoy watching videos than reading these days. So how can we create video content to tell our stories? Or how can we create graphics or memes that help to tell our stories based upon the audience and who we're trying to communicate with? And then it's all about being consistent, and I go back to, it starts the foundational level. What's your mission statement? What's your vision statement? What are your core values? And some people say, oh, those aren't useful. Well, they're only not useful if you don't actually use them. But if you create a mission statement that is succinct and is very easy to remember and gets right to the point, and a vision statement, you understand the difference between those two and how to use them and core values, then you start to implement that in your messaging within your company and without your company, like outside of your company, to let customers know, let prospects know what you value, what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are. It's a great recruiting tool as well. I was just talking to Josh Breeze over at Freight Vaughn on my podcast on Standing Out, and he said that they have spent $0 on recruiting because their brand is so strong, their marketing is so strong. And that's the benefit of having a brand, is it helps with those types of things. It helps with recruiting. And so again, just thinking about, who are we trying to communicate with? What employees are you trying to attract, and where do they live? And what messages are going to resonate most with them? And then you try to tell your story within that medium, within that platform. And when you do that, consistently and it's engaging content, people can't help but be drawn to it or take notice of it. And so it's really powerful. But that's where you start, is who you are as a company, who you want to talk to, where they live, and how do you want to communicate with them?
Yeah, I love that, because I can think of clients that I have or organizations in the transportation industry, and just very candidly, the ones who have a clear mission and vision and brand, man, they're much easier to recruit for, right? Just because they have a standard, and people can look at that and say, hey, this is what they do, and this is why they do it. And people either say, hey, I'm on board with that, or I'm not. And that's okay if they're not, right?
Right. Better to know now than once they get in there.
Say again?
Better to know now than once they get in there.
Exactly right. Yeah. Like, hey, let's go attract somebody who is about our mission. And that's fantastic. So I love that. I think that's incredibly good. And then you see too, people rally around those visions and those missions as well. Honestly, it's the companies, in my mind, you may have a mission or vision, but if people aren't talking about it, it's one of two things, right? It's either they're not seeing it actually happen, right? You're not executing on your mission or vision, or it's not a good mission or vision, right? So Either make it clear, or make sure people are seeing the impact of that mission and vision. And when people see the impact, like they're getting their hands involved in it, they're seeing how you're making a difference in someone's life. You're seeing how we're growing or we're giving back or something like that. Holy cow, like that tangible thing will get you out of bed in the morning. That will say, hey, I can actually make a difference in people's life because of doing whatever I do. And that makes it a little less monotonous or hard on days when it's tough.
Yeah, the reality has to match, the mission or the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, the story that you're telling. Reality's got to match that. If one of your core values is generosity, but there's never any opportunities where you're, giving things away, giving money, raising money for charity or whatever it is, then at some point somebody's going to go, I don't think this is actually a core value. This doesn't resonate with what you're saying. Right. The reality doesn't match up. So it definitely needs to be reality. But again, the thing I love about companies that get it right is that they're okay being authentically who they are, and then they've thought it through. Like, what do I believe in? What are my core values? What do I want to represent? And how am I going to do it? And again, when those things line up, it's magical. It's absolutely magical when those things line up.
That's great. Cool, man. I love this conversation, Trey. I want to kind of work towards wrapping up here. A couple questions. One of them is, when you look back, because we've got a lot of different people that listen to this podcast, whether it's someone leading a, transportation company, somebody who's new to the industry, trying to learn. If you had to look back to your 20-year-old self, give yourself some advice, what advice would that be?
Oh, man. Well, all things being equal, I think the two things I would probably tell my 20-year-old self is, be more focused on being around great leaders than trying to find your dream job.
Yep. I
think that I would enjoy digging ditches more if I'm with somebody that inspires me and motivates me than I would having my, quote unquote dream job with a leader that I don't respect. And I think that, that type of thing would save a lot of people a lot of heartache, is if they focus on that as opposed to the job that they think that they want. Because you can always grow into a job that you want, especially if you're with a leader who believes in you and helps you want to get to that place. But if you're with a leader that just isn't a great leader and doesn't respect you or what's going on, or just doesn't lead well, that's just going to get old really, really fast. So I would focus on leadership and being around great people as much as possible, even more than I did. I would say that this is paramount. You've got to do that. And then I think the second thing I'd probably tell myself is, there's a lot of things, but start saving more, save early, pay myself in advance, invest more. I think, and life is the way it is. You can't really change anything in the past, but my 20s were really spent, I think, kind of recovering from my childhood, my just the struggles with my family. My parents divorced, and it was just emotionally tough. So my 20s was really, I think, trying to figure out life and who I was and what was going to happen. But if I could take my current self back then, that's what I would do differently. I'd spend more time with great leaders. I would invest more, and I would focus more on being around great people as opposed to what I'm actually doing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the candid thoughts there too. Yeah, it's good. What when it comes to reading right now, is there any books that you've read that you would recommend, whether that's to leaders or people get started, that throughout your journey have been highly impactful, one or two books?
Yeah. I like to read when I can. I'd love to say I'm a huge reader, but I'm not a huge reader, but I do like to read as much as I can. I've actually, now that I'm an entrepreneur and I can kind of dictate my schedule a little bit more for myself, I have actually blocked off an hour 3 times a week just to read for education. So building that in has been really helpful. I've been reading a lot more in the last 5 months than I have in the last 5 years. But the books that have mattered the most to me, first and foremost, the Bible, the wisdom that's in the Bible, and being consistent about reading that goes along right with our mission statement, which is to glorify God and make much of Him while helping each client build their brand. And so staying true to that is really important. There's a book that goes along with that. It's Doing Business by the Good Book. It's by David Stewart. He's a CEO of Worldwide Technologies here in St. Louis. So I'm really enjoying that book. 52 lessons, so 1 a week. It's really easy to kind of get through. I'm also reading a book by my good friend Randy Fox, who wrote a book called A Leader Worth Following. And that's been a great book to read as well. I've enjoyed that. And then, of course, my daughter's really into Harry Potter. So I'm currently working on Harry Potter number 5. I'm working on, or is it 4? I'm working on the number 4, actually, The Goblet of Fire. So I'm trying to get through that one for her as well, just for a little bit of fun. But from a leadership perspective, I would say my favorite book all time, not including the Bible that I've read, is a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. And that book did a lot for me, because we live in a culture where failure is not encouraged. You go to school, failure's bad. Don't fail. F's are bad. Whatever. You get in trouble for F's. I mean, all those kind of things. There's a stigma that you're dumb, you're stupid, whatever, because you get an F. Like we don't encourage people to fail, and what that does when you get older is it discourages you from trying. Yeah. And when people don't try because they're afraid to fail, they miss out on so much in life. My mom has told me numerous times that in her career, she was a secretary for the government. There were many times in which she could have applied for a promotion, but she was afraid of what that meant. She was afraid of success even. She was afraid of not getting it, of failure. There were a lot of things that were just holding her back. And so she didn't even try. And she would, if she was on this podcast right now today, she'd say it's one of her biggest regrets in life that she didn't try. And at the end of your life, you don't regret the things that you did. You regret the things that you didn't do. But because we don't encourage people to try and accept failure, because failure is a process to learn, because we don't do that in our culture at large, we don't do that in schools where students grow up. Because of that, we find people in adult life that they're unwilling to try, and they miss out on a lot of life because they're trying to keep it safe. They don't want to fail. They don't want to experience that emotionally. The most successful people in life are the people who understand that failure is a part of the process. And that book was really instrumental in helping me understand that. The whole title alone, Failing Forward, like failing is how you move forward. It's how you progress. It's how Elon Musk has established Tesla as a brand, because they just failed over and over. It's how SpaceX is now the primary carrier for NASA to send astronauts into space, because they failed over and over and over again. And I just think that, we have to embrace that more. And that book helped me understand that and be much more willing to try and not be worried about if things fail. I mean, the worst thing that happens is you learn, and then you get better, you move on or try something new. But to me, that was a really healthy book to read.
I love that book. I couldn't agree more with that. An eye opener for me as I went into my career as well, because it changed that mindset, that shift of like, figure out what doesn't work. And that once you do, then you'll be that much closer to what does work. Kind of like the no's we talked about earlier when it comes to sales.
100%.
Like, fantastic. Like, figure out all the ways that don't work, so you'll be that much closer to the ways that do work. I think it's a great mindset to have. And if you can make that switch in your mind of like, okay, let's figure out what doesn't work. And hopefully as we do that, we will find a way that works. That's just a life hack that's great, because you will find a way to work, and you won't be ashamed of, oh man, I didn't make it. I'm not whatever title or whatever it is. So.
Yeah. I like a quote that Denzel Washington often says when he does a graduation speech. He says, if you're not failing, you're not even trying.
Yeah.
And I think when people go through life without failing, they miss out on all the blessings that come from those experiences when you do fail, that make you so much better. The Michael Jordan commercial, I've missed 9,000 shots in my career, 42 times. My team trusted me with the last shot and I missed. I've failed over and over and over in my life. That's why I succeed. Like, that quote is so true. Mm-hmm. And yet, man, it's kind of contrary to popular opinion, because we just embrace this culture that failure is bad, and it's just not.
It's good. Trey, man, we could talk all day. Love talking with you. I appreciate where you stand on your faith and where your organization is going. We relate, with a company. Hey, we want to create championship teams for a greater purpose. We want to glorify God in the way that we do that as well. And just encourage you to keep doing that, and enjoy talking with you here as well. Obviously, if we wanted to continue the conversation with Trey, or talk with you about branding or marketing, or get a hold of you, how would we do that?
There's a couple ways to do that. First way is you can visit our website, betaconsultinggroup.com. And it's easy to remember beta. It's like the fish. You could go that route, but it's actually an acronym. The acronym is Be Excellent Today Alliance. We're working towards creating a community of people that are pursuing excellence every day. And so betaconsultinggroup.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn and DM me on there, connect and follow, and check us out on our podcasts. Any of those ways is a really great way to connect.
Cool. Trey Griggs, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn, Adrian Chapman, and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.